I just wanted to begin. I've been reading this August Time magazine piece that tells all with absolute accuracy, I'm sure. And by way of introducing our two panelists today, they come out very well as enthusiastic supporters of doing something about terrorism. Richard Armitage, the barrel-chested Deputy Secretary of State, Paul Wolfowitz, the scholarly hawk from the Pentagon. But
I resent that comment.
The article, no, you should be very pleased with it in the context of the article, which says there were those who weren't quite as anxious to move forward on terrorism, and that you all were very enthusiastic, and I have noted that in everything that you've been doing.
And I will also note that Mr. Armitage did not reject his description of barrel-chested.
Indeed.
And I didn't say which part of mine I was rejecting.
Well, in your testimony, Secretary Wolfowitz, you talk about your service on the Rumsfeld Commission and the issuance of the report back in 1998. I just wanted to quote, because this was not quoted during your oral presentation. You talk about your service on that commission and the fact that because of the significant need for good intelligence, Congress subsequently requested an intelligence side letter to the report, which was provided. And then I quote partially from your testimony here. First, according to the side letter, it was evident to all commissioners that resources for intelligence had been cut too deeply, and that the United States was entering a period in which the intelligence community was going to be seriously challenged to meet its foremost task, preventing surprise. You go on to say that U.S. intelligence capabilities needed to succeed in this task, the letter concluded, were not as robust as they needed to be. And to go on to conclude, the letter highlighted that in methodological approach, analytical depth, and presentation to users, the intelligence community was in a degraded situation. And then your testimony notes that partly as a result of this, Congress responded with a significant increase in funding for intelligence in the fiscal '99 budget, but, and I quote your testimony, despite the best efforts of this committee, however, the increases were not sustained in fiscal years 2000 or 2001. And then you conclude by noting that literally at the time of the attacks last September, the Department was preparing a significant increase for intelligence in the FY 2003 budget, and you note that immediately after the attacks it was doubled. So I take your point, and have been urging for some time, that we focus on the resources part of the problem, that many of the deficiencies that people have been able to point to here can be traced back to a requirement that we compromise some intelligence because of inadequate resource. And my first question to you is, without citing any specifics unless you'd like to and can in an open session, are you aware, generally, in other words, of situations when intelligence compromises had to be made because of inadequate resources?
Yes, generally, but I'm not aware of ones that I would directly connect to the September 11th events.
Does it, secondly, make any sense to fix the intelligence budget as a specific arbitrary percentage of the defense budget, given especially the kinds of things you've been trying to do in terms of transition and the increasing requirements for good intelligence as a component of the new kind of war that we fight?
I don't think so. I'm reluctant to have arbitrary targets, although it's maybe good to keep them in mind as a kind of benchmark to ask yourself the question. But we went through, to give you an example of how I think it needs to be done, we went through a major exercise last fall in putting the budget together in looking at transformational technologies that hadn't made it into the service budgets, and a lot of those were in the intelligence area. And then we sat down program by program with Director Tennant and with his people and decided where there were overlaps and redundancies or where there were gaps that needed to be filled. And I don't think there's any substitute for doing the detail work, and we did it, and we need to keep doing it.
This time has gone far too quickly. I wanted to give Secretary Armitage just an opportunity to talk too about the need for enhancements in the budget with respect to the State Department's significant responsibilities, especially with regard to terrorists coming into the country, the visa programs, the new requirements that I think we have properly placed with the State Department in the border security bill. And I guess, therefore, before the yellow light goes off.
Before he answers, can I just say I'm supportive?
We've, in the first 2 years, I must say the Congress, in relative terms, has been generous to us. The requirements of the Patriot Act and further in the Homeland Security Bill, which we gladly accept, will definitely require more consular affairs officers, more training in consular affairs, which is exactly what you all want. This does not mean, however, that even in the state budget, that other than for planning purposes, I would welcome a fixed percentage of the GMP devoted to the state budget, because it's what you do with the money that's so much more important than some arbitrary number. But for planning purposes, having a general range would be very helpful, I think, for guys who have to make budget decisions.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Secretary. Thank you, Senator Kyl.